Makkabiym Ri'Shon 1. And it happened, after Alexander son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Eri'Moshe king of the Persians, and Madai, that he reigned in his stead the first over Jordan, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. And he went through the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, so much so that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries, and nations, and kings, who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he would die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them, while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then died, and his servants bore rule, every one in his place. And after his death they all put crowns upon themselves, so that their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, the son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of Yavanim. In those days went out there Yasharel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and cut a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them we have had such sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over the Mitzrayim, that he might have the dominion of 2 realms. Wherefore he entered into Mitzrayim with a great multitude, with chariots, and elephants, and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Mitzrayim. But Ptolemy were afraid of them, and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Mitzrayim, and he took the spoils thereof. And after that Antiochus had smitten Mitzrayim, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Yasharel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar, and the menorah of light, and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold, and the precious vessels, and he also took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoken very proudly. Therefore there was a great mourning in Yasharel, in every place where they were, so that the princes and the elders mourned, the virgins and the young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Yahud, who came into Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spoke peaceable words unto them. But all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Yasharel. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and the children they took captive, and possessed the cattle. Then built they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. They stored it also with armor and victuals, and when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Yasharel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it, so much so that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. Whereupon the city was made a habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Shabbats into reproach, her honor into contempt. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his own laws, so that all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also Yasharel consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Shabbat. For the king had sent Sepharim by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Yehud, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid ascending smoke offerings, and sacrifice, and drink offerings into the temple, and that they should profane the Shabbats and feast days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars, and Asherah poles, and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the Torah, and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. In the selfsame manner wrote he to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Yehud to sacrifice city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit everyone that forsook the Torah, and so they committed evils in the land, and drove Yasharel into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for help. Now the 15th day of the month Kislev, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and built idol altars throughout the cities of Yehud on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the Sepharim of the Torah which they found, they burnt them with fire. And whosoever was found with any Cefer of the covenant, or if any committed to the Torah, the king's commandment was that they should be put him to death. They by their authority unto Yasharel every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of Elohim, at which time according to the commandment they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And they hanged the infants about their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Yasharel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing, wherefore the rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died, and there was a very great wrath upon Yasharel. Makkabiym Ri'Shon, chapter 2. In those days arose Mattathiah the son of Yochanan, the son of Shimon, a priest of the sons of Yariv, from Jerusalem that dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons: Yochanan, called Cadiz; Shimon, called Thasi; Yehuda, who was called Maccabee; Elazar, called Avaran; and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphus. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Yehud and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore I was born to see this misery of my people, and of the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation has not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? All her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she is become a bondservant. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and glory, is laid waste, and the other nations have profaned it. To what end therefore shall we live any longer? Then Mattathiah and his sons rent their clothes, and put on sackcloth, and mourned very sore. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Modin, to make them sacrifice. And when many of Yasharel came unto them, Mattathiah also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers, and said to Mattathiah on this wise, You are a ruler, and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore, come ye first, and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Yehuda also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shall you and your house be in the number of the king's friends, and you and your children shall be honored with silver and gold, and many rewards. Then Mattathiah answered and spoke with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the faith of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. Far be it that we should forsake the Torah and the ordinances. We will not hearken unto the king's words, to go from our faith either on the right hand or the left. Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Yahudim in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Which thing when Mattathiah saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his mind trembled, neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Thus he dealt zealously for the Torah of Elohim, like as Penekek did unto Zimri, the son of Shalom. And Mattathiah cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous of the Torah, and maintains the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains, and left after all they had in the city. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and their women, and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them. Now when it was told the king's servant and the host that was at Jerusalem in the city of David, that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places of the wilderness, they pursued after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they encamped against them and made war against them on the Shabbat. And they said unto them, Let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth, and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. But they said, We will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Shabbat. So then they gave them the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid, but said, Let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us that ye put us to death wrongfully. So they rose up against them in battle on the Shabbat, and they slew them, with their women and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. Now when Mattathiah and his friends understood thereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, If we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives in Torah against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. At that time therefore they decreed, saying, Whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Shabbat, we will fight against them, neither will we all die, as our brethren that were murdered in secret places. Then came unto him a company of Hasidians, who were mighty men of Yasharel, even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the Torah. Also all that they fled for persecution joined themselves unto them, and were a stay unto them. So they joined their forces, and smote sinful men in their anger, and wicked men in their wrath, but the rest fled to the heathen for help. Then Mattathiah and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars, and what children soever they found within the coast of Yasharel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. They pursued also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hand. So they recovered the Torah out of the hand of the other nations, and out of the hand of kings, neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. Now when the time drew near that Mattathiah should die, he said unto his sons, Now has pride and rebuke and gotten strength, and the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the Torah, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time, so shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name. Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? Joseph in the time of his distress kept the commandment, and was made Adonai of Mizraim. Pinchas, our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Yahusha, for the fulfilling of the word, was made a judge in Yasharel. Caleb, for bearing witness before the assembly, received the heritage of the land. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Eliyahu, for being zealous and fervent for the Torah, was taken up into heaven. Chenayahu, Azaryahu, and Mishael, by believing, were saved out of the flame. Daniel, for his innocency, was delivered from the mouth of lions. And thus consider ye throughout all ages, that none put their trust in him shall be overcome. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned into dust, and his thoughts is become to nothing. Wherefore ye, my sons, be valiant, and show yourselves men in behalf of the Torah, for by it shall ye obtain glory. And behold, I know that your brother Shimon is a man of counsel. Give ear unto him always, he shall be a father unto you. As for Yehuda Maccabee, He has been mighty and strong even from his youth up. Let him be your captain, and fight the battle of the people. Take also unto you all those that observe the Torah, and avenge ye the wrong of your people. Recompense fully the heathen, and take heed to the commandments of the Torah. So he blessed them, and was gathered to his fathers. And he died in the 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchres of his father at Modin, and all Yasharel made great lamentation for him. Makkabiym Ri'Shon, chapter 3. Then his son Yehuda, called Maccabee, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that helped with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Yasharel. So he got his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness around him, and he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey, for he pursued the wicked, and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. Wherefore the wicked shrunk in fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because Yeshua prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings, and made Yaakov glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Yahud, destroying the wicked out of them, and turning away wrath from Yasharel, so that he was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Then Apollonius gathered the other nations together and a great host out of Shomeron, to fight against Yasharel, which thing when Yehuda perceived, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Wherefore Yehuda took their spoils, and Apollonius' sword also, and therewith he fought all his long life. Now when Saran, a prince of the army of the Aram, heard say that Yehuda had gathered unto him a multitude and a company of the faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and an honor in the kingdom, for I will go fight with Yehuda and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandment. So he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the wicked to help him, and to be avenged of the children of Yasharel. And when he came near to the going up of Beit Coron, Yehuda went forth to meet him with a small company, who, when they saw the host coming up to meet them, said unto Yehuda, How shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day? Unto whom Yehuda answered, It is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few, and with the Elohim of heaven it is all one, to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of the battle stands not in the multitude of a host, but strength comes from heaven. They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us and our women and our children, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our Torah. Wherefore Yahuwah himself would overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. Now as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them, and so Saran and his host was overthrown before him. And they pursued them from the going down of Beit Coron unto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them, and the remnant fled into the land of Palestine. Then began to fear Yehuda and his brethren, and exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them, so much so as his fame came unto the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Yehuda. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all forces of his realm, even a very strong army. He opened up also his treasure, and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures failed, and that the tributes in the country were small, because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land in taking away the Torah, which he brought upon the land in taking away of the Torah which had been of old time, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries, and to gather much money. So he left Lysias, a nobleman, and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river Parath unto the borders of Mitzrayim, and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces, and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done, and also concerning them that dwelt in Yehud and Jerusalem. To wit, he should send an army against them, to destroy and root out the strength of Yasharel, and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place, and that he should place strangers in all their quarters, and divide their land by lot. So the king took half of the forces that remained, and departed from Antioch, his royal city, the 147th year. And having passed the river Perath, he went through the high countries. Then Lysias chose Ptolemy, the son of Dorymenes, Nicanor, Gorgias, mighty men of the king's friends, and with him he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Yehud, and destroy it as the king commanded. So they went forth with all their power, and came and pitched by Yemin in the plain country. And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Yasharel for slaves. A power also of Aram and of the land of the Palestine joined themselves unto them. Now when Yehuda and his brethren saw that the miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish them, they said one to another, Let us restore the decayed fortune of our people, and let us fight for our people and the sanctuary. Then was the assembly gathered together, that they might be ready for a battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Yaakov, and the pipe with the harp ceased. Wherefore Yasharel assembled themselves together, and came to Mizpah, over against Jerusalem. For in Mizpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Yasharel. Then they fasted that day, and put on sackcloth, and cast ashes upon their heads, and rent their clothes, and laid open the Cefer of the Torah, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. They brought also the priests' garments, and the firstfruits, and the tithes, and the Nazarene they stirred up, who accomplished their days. Then cried they with a loud voice toward heaven, saying, What shall we do with these, and whither shall we carry them away? For your sanctuary is trodden down and profaned, and your priests are in heaviness and brought low. And lo, the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they imagine against us you know. How shall we be able to stand against them, except you, O Elohim, be our help? Then sounded they with shofars, and cried with a loud voice. And after this Yehuda ordained captains over the people, even captains over thousands, and over hundreds, and over fifties, and over tens. But as for such as were building houses, or had betrothed women, or were planting vineyards, or were fearful, those he commanded that they should return, every man to his own house according to the Torah. So the camp removed, and pitched upon the south side of Yemin. And Yehuda said, Arm yourselves, and be valiant men, and see that ye be in readiness against the morning, that ye may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us to destroy us in our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people in our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of Elohim is in heaven, so let him do. Makkabiym Ri'Shon, chapter 4. Then took Gorgias 5,000 footmen, and 1,000 of the best horsemen, and removed out of the camp by night, to the end that he might rush in upon the camp of the Yahudim, and smite them suddenly. And the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Yehuda heard thereof, he himself removed, and the valiant men with him, that he might smite the king's army which was at Yemin, while as yet the forces were dispersed from the camp. In the mean season came Gorgias by night into the camp of Yehuda, and when he found no man there, he sought them in the mountains. For he said, These fellows flee from us. But as soon as it was day, Yehuda showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. And they saw that the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed, and compassed round about with horsemen, and these were expert of war. Then said Yehuda to the men that were with him, Fear ye not their multitude, neither be afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now therefore let us cry unto heaven, if perchance Yahuwah will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face this day, that so all the heathen may know that there is one who delivers and saves Yasharel. Then the strangers lifted up their eyes, and saw them coming over against them. Wherefore they went out of the camp to battle, but they that were with Yehuda sounded their shofars. So they joined battle, and the heathen being discomfited fled into the plain. Howbeit all the hindmost of them were slain with the sword, for they pursued them unto Gazam, and unto the plains of Edom, and Ashdod, and Yabneel, so that there were slain of them upon it 3,000 men. This done, Yehuda returned again with his host from pursuing them, and said to the people, Be not greedy of the spoil, inasmuch as there is a battle before us, and Gojais and his hosts are here by us in the mountain. But stand ye now against our enemies, and overcome them, and after this ye may boldly take the spoils. And Yehuda was yet speaking these words, there appeared a part of them looking out of the mountain, who when they perceived that the Yahudim had put their host to flight, and were burning the tents, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. When therefore they perceived these things, they were sore afraid. And seeing also the host of Yehuda in the plain ready to fight, they fled every one into the land of the strangers. Then Yehuda returned to spoil the tents, where they got much gold and silver, and blue silk, and purple of the sea, and great riches. After this they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving, and praised Yahuwah in heaven, because he is good, because his mercy endures forever. Thus Yasharel had a great deliverance that day. Now all the strangers that had escaped came and told Lysias what had happened, who, when he heard thereof, was confounded and discouraged, because neither such things as he would were done unto Yasharel, nor such things as the king commanded him were come to pass. The next year therefore following Lysias gathered together 60,000 choice men of foot, and 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them. So they came to Edom, and pitched their tents at Beit Surah, and Yehuda met them with 10,000 men. And when he saw that mighty army, he prayed and said, Blessed are you, O Cefer of Yasharel, who did quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of your servant David, and gave the host of strangers into the hands of Jonathan the son of Shaul and his armor-bearer. Shut up this army in the hand of your people Yasharel, and let them be confounded in their power and horsemen. Make them be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love you, and let all those that know your name praise you with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the host of Lysias about 5,000 men. Even before them they were slain. Now when Lysias saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Yehuda's soldiers, and how they were ready to either live or die valiantly, he went into Antioch, and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again unto Yehuda. Then said Yehuda and his brethren, Behold, our enemies are discomfited, let us go to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Upon this all the hosts assembled themselves together, and went up into Mount Sion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profane, and the gates burned up, and shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest, or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priests' chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made great lamentation, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down to the flat ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the shofars, and cried toward heaven. Then Yehuda appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the Torah, who cleansed the sanctuary and bore out the defiled stones into an unclean place. And when as they consulted what to do with the altar of ascending smoke offerings, which was profane, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down, and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them. Then they took the whole stones according to the Torah, and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hallowed the courts. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the menorah, and the altar of ascending smoke offerings, and the incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the menorah they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore they set the loaves upon the table, and spread out the veils, and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which was called the month Kislev, in the 148th year they rose early in the morning, and offered sacrifice according to the Torah upon the new altar of ascending smoke offerings which they had made. Look, at what time and what day that the heathen had profaned it, even in that was it dedicated with songs, and citherns, and harps, and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshipping and praising the Elohim of heaven, who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered ascending smoke offerings with gladness, and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold, and with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed, and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there a very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover Yehuda and his brethren, with the whole assembly of Yasharel, ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month of Kislev, with mirth and gladness. At that time also they built up Mount Zion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the other nations should come and tread it down as they had done before. And they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Beit Surah to guard it, that the people might have a defense against Edom. Makkabiym Ri'Shon, chapter 5. Now when the nations round about heard that the altar was built and the sanctuary renewed as before, it displeased them very much. Wherefore they thought to destroy the generation of Yaakov that was among them, and thereupon they began to slay and destroy the people. Then Yehuda fought against the children of Esau and Edom and Arabotine, because they besieged Gael. And he gave them a great overthrow, and abated their courage, and took their spoils. Also he remembered the injury of the children of Baan, who had been a snare and an offense unto the people, and that they lay in wait for them in the ways. He shut them up therefore in the towers, and encamped against them, and destroyed them utterly, and burned the towers of that place with fire, and all that were therein. After he passed over to the children of Ammon, where he found a mighty power and much people, with Timotheus their captain. So he fought many battles with them, till at length they were discomfited before him, and he smote them. And when he had taken Yazar, with the towns belonging thereto, he returned into Yehuda. Then the heathen that were in Galaad assembled themselves together against Yasharel, that were in their quarters to destroy them, but they fled to the fortress of Dathema. And they sent Sepharim unto Yehuda and his brethren. The heathen that are round about us are assembled together against us to destroy us, and they are preparing to come and take the fortress whereinto we are fled, Timotheus being captain of their hosts. Come now therefore, and deliver us from their hands, for many of us are slain. Yea, all of our brethren that were in the places of Tovayahu are put to death. Their women and their children also they have carried away captives, and borne away their stuff, and they have destroyed there about 1,000 men. While these Sepharim we were yet reading, behold, there came other messengers from Galil, with their clothes rent, who reported on this wise, and said, They of Akko, and of Sor, and of Sidon, and Galil of the other nations are assembled together against us, to consume us. Now when Yehuda and the people heard these words, there assembled a great assembly together, to consult what they should do for their brethren, that were in trouble and assaulted of them. Then said Yehuda unto Shimon his brother, Choose you out men, and go deliver your brethren that are in Galil, for I and Jonathan my brother will go to the country of Gilad. So he left Yosef, the son of Zachariahu, and Azayahu, captains of the people, with the remnant of the host in Yehuda to keep it. And to whom he gave commandments, saying, Take ye charge of this people, and see that ye make not war against the heathen until the time that we come again. Now unto Shimon were given 3,000 men to go into Galil, and unto Yehuda 8,000 men for the country of Gilad. Then went Shimon into Galil, where he fought many battles with the heathen, so that the heathen were discomfited by him. And he pursued them unto the gate of Akko, and there were slain of the heathen about 3,000 men, whose spoil he took. And those that were in Galil and in Arbatis, with their women and their children, and all they had, took he away with them, and brought them into Yehuda with great joy. Yehuda the Maccabee also and his brother Jonathan went over the Yarden, and traveled 3 days' journey in the wilderness, where they met with the Nabathim, who came unto them in a peaceable manner, and told them everything that had happened to their brethren in the land of Gilad, and how that many of them were shut up in Bosor, and Beor, and Alima, Casphor, Maged, and Ashtaroth Karnaim. All these cities are strong and great. And they were shut up in the rest of the cities of the country of Gilad. And against tomorrow they had appointed to bring their host against the forts, and to take them, and to destroy them all in one day. Hereupon Yehuda and his host turned suddenly by the way of the wilderness unto Bosora. And when they had won the city, he slew all the males with the edge of the sword, and took all their spoils, and burned the city with fire. For whence he removed by night, and went till he came to the fortress. And early in the morning they looked up, and behold, there was an innumerable people bearing ladders and other engines of war to take the fortress, for they assaulted them. When Yehuda therefore saw that the battle was begun, and that the cry of the city went up to the heaven, with shofars and a great sound, he said unto his hosts, Fight this day for your brethren. So he went forth behind them in 3 companies, who sounded their shofars and cried with prayer. Then the host of Timotheus, knowing that it was Yehuda Maccabee, fled from him. Wherefore he smote them with a great slaughter, so that there were killed of them that day about 8,000 men. This done, Yehuda turned aside to Mizpah, and after he had assaulted it, he took and slew all the males therein, and received the spoils thereof, and burnt it with fire. From thence went he, and took Casphor, Magad, Beor, and the other cities of the country of Gilead. After these things gathered Timotheus another host, and encamped against Raphan beyond the brook. So Yehuda sent men to espy the host, who brought him word, saying, All the heathen that be round about us are assembled unto them, even a very great host. He has also hired the Arabim to help them, and they have pitched their tents beyond the brook, ready to come and fight against you. Upon this Yehuda went to meet them. Then Timotheus said unto the captains of his host, When Yehuda and his host come near the brook, if he pass over first to us, we shall not be able to withstand him, for he will mightily prevail against us. But if he be afraid and camp beyond the river, we shall go over unto him and prevail against him. Now when Yehuda came near the brook, he caused the scribes of the people to remain by the brook, unto whom he gave commandments, saying, Suffer no man to remain in the camp, but let all come to the battle. So he went first over unto them, and all the people after him. Then all the heathen, being discomfited before him, cast away their weapons, and fled unto the temple that was at Ashtaroth Karnaim. But they took the city, and burned the temple with all that were therein. Thus was Ashtaroth Karnaim subdued, neither could they stand any longer before Yehuda. Then Yehuda gathered together all Yasharel that were in the country of Gilead, from the least to the greatest, even their women and their children and their stuff, a very great host, to the end they might come into the land of Yehuda. Now when they came unto Ephron, this was a great city in the way as they should go, very well fortified. They could not turn from it, either on the right hand or the left, but must needs pass through the midst of it. Then they of the city shut them out, and stopped up the gates with stones. Whereupon Yehuda sent unto them in a peaceable manner, saying, Let us pass through your land to go into our own country, and none shall do you any hurt. We will only pass through on foot. Howbeit they would not open unto him. Wherefore Yehuda commanded a proclamation to be made throughout the host, that every man should pitch his tent in the place where he was. So the soldiers pitched and assaulted the city all that day and all that night, till that at length the city was delivered into his hands, who then slew all the males with the edge of the sword, and razed the city, and took the spoils thereof, and passed through the city over them that were slain. After this they went over the Yarden into the great plain before Bet-san, and Yehuda gathered together those that came behind, and exhorted the people all the way through, till they came into the land of Yehuda. So they went up to Mount Sion with joy and gladness, where they offered ascending smoke offerings, because not one of them were slain until they had returned in peace. Now what time as Yehuda and Jonathan were in the land of Gilead, and Shimon his brother in Galilee before Akko, Joseph the son of Zachariah, and Azariah, captains of the garrisons, heard of the valiant acts and warlike deeds which they had done. Wherefore they said, Let us go get us a name, and go fight against the heathen that are round about us. So when they had given charge unto the garrison that was with them, they went toward Yabneel. Then came Gojaias and his men out of the city to fight against them. And so it was that Joseph and Azariah were put to flight, and pursued unto the borders of Yehuda. And there were slain that day of the people of Yasharel about 2,000 men. Thus was there a great overthrow among the children of Yasharel, because they were not obedient unto Yehuda and his brethren, but thought to do some valiant act. Moreover, these men came not of the seed of those by whose hand deliverance was given unto Yasharel. Howbeit the man Yehuda and his brethren were greatly renowned in the sight of all Yasharel, and of all the heathen wheresoever their name was heard of. So much so as the people assembled unto them with joyful acclamations. Afterward went Yehuda forth with his brethren, and fought against the children of Esau in the land toward the Negev, where he smote Chevron and the towns thereof, and pulled down the fortress of it, and burned the towers thereof round about. From thence he removed to go into the land of the Pelishtim, and passed through Shomeron. At that time certain priests, desirous to show their valor, were slain in battle, for they went out to fight unadvisedly. So Yehuda turned to Ashdod in the land of the Pelishtim, and when he had pulled down their altars, and burned their carved images with fire, and spoiled their cities, he returned to the land of Yehuda.